the three of us were just like, we were in. It's like let's just play all these shows, and I mean we played a ton of crappy shows. We played a ton of good shows, and it's also like it's kind of part of the game. I feel like, it's like you gotta look like you're a band and playing shows, even if the shows are like absolutely terrible.
Kevin, hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the Question and Answers podcast. I'm really excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, anyone who is not aware of this fine gentleman, this is Kevin Day, who is a member of the band Aspiega, as well as the only real member of Graduation Speech, which is his solo project. But he also manages and runs his own PR company called Part-Time PR. And yeah, I thought it would be really cool to have you on the show to talk about not only your solo endeavor, but you're also your band and your PR agency. Because I think that that's pretty awesome that you are involved in so much in the music scene.
For sure. I feel very fortunate for a lot of the opportunities that have kind of like come my way through music. Yeah, it's funny. There's a swearing song from their last album, and I hope I don't butcher this, but it's like the lyric is like, by pure dumb luck, I've gotten where I'm going, and I feel like that is how I've navigated music. It just feels like dumb luck a lot of the times, but yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people end up feeling that way, regardless of where you kind of end up. Like, I think once you've been doing music for any period of time and you've maybe attained a certain height or you've reached like a certain goal, at least most of the people that I know, like there's like this weird, awkward sense of like humility and accomplishment that kind of comes from all of that. And
Sure.
I don't know, because we're all in it for different reasons, and I think most people are in it just because they think it's fun and they want to do it, and they're
For
not
sure.
really looking for fame or fortune or anything like that. But no, I think it's really cool that you're so involved. And so I was actually turned on to you the first time because of your association with people that I know. So like I know that you've worked really closely with people like Brian Moss, with his projects over the years, like Great Apes, Hanalei, etc. And I know that you reached out to me for the podcast earlier in the year to work with some of the clients that you've worked with, such as Jeff with Divided Heaven and Devon Kay with his project with Devon Kay and Solutions. So that was great that we were able to kind of keep that correspondence together. And I remember kind of earlier in the process, I mentioned, dude, let's get you on the show. Like, you're interesting. You've got a bunch of stuff that you could talk about. Like, I think that'd be awesome. And initially you were like, yeah, let's do it. And then fast forward several months and now we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always when it comes to, I guess, some of the PR work involved with promoting my own projects, there's like this weird hesitation sometimes, and I want to make sure that anyone that I'm working with has as many opportunities as they can get. So sometimes I'm like, I should, like, that should be the focus. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here and be talking about it. But yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of warming up to get there, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a phenomenon that is not uncommon with individuals in regards to their own material, because
Sure.
I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of musicians and artists just in general try very hard to separate their work and their art from this promotion aspect of it, and like the marketing side, and how that can kind of start to, I guess, in some ways cheapen it. Maybe is maybe too strong of a word, but
I don't think so. I think there has been uh, there's been such a shift recently, um, as far as like content, and it's just not something that everyone's comfortable with, or they only see a certain type of content and they know they're not comfortable with that, and they haven't figured out what they are comfortable with. And yeah, I think, a lot of people, when they're creating music, any sort of art, writing, uh, anything, there's just such a personal connection usually, and there's some deep rooted emotions, I like to think, in most of those things. And yeah, and then it feels weird to try to then sell or push that, you know to total strangers, and to do it in a way that, you, like you said, you don't feel that you're uh tarnishing the message or the original intent or idea behind the art. So yeah, it's a strange thing to navigate for sure. And you know right now everything is computer based, or online, so that's like all you're seeing right now. Like, there's so many bands that can, when touring's a thing, they can go on tour and kind of, put that out on display. They kind of, leave it all on the stage, which I think will kind of maybe help them deal with the content part or promoting part, and not stress about that as much. But right now it's just like, all we can do is like kind of post stuff and hope people are watching or listening. Yeah.
yeah, it's a strange, exciting, interesting, sometimes frustrating world to be a part of. And yeah, I've certainly experienced that, not only with my band Tsunami Bomb, but also with Solo Heart Records, and even this podcast, like trying to kind of vie for attention from people, to at very least even just listen to your song, let alone buy it, or if
Right.
you have a music video, to watch the video and to watch the whole thing and not just like the first 30 seconds of it or something like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, as somebody who is in that PR space, I see that you kind of get to see and experience that pretty handily. So I'd love to kind of pick your brain on that a little bit. But before we jump into the PR thing,
Sure.
I would like to ask you, so Graduation Speech is your solo project, which you've now been doing for how long officially?
um I want to say roughly 2016. The first EP came out in the end of June or early July of 2017. That was kind of like the first, here is this thing that you can listen to with a name and all that. And I released a follow-up EP in 2019 and introduced additional instrumentation. I had my buddy Devon, who plays drums in By Surprise and The Only Ghost in Town, ended up doing some percussion and some drumming. And my friend Pat Pye played keys on that EP. And going backwards, the first EP was just me, acoustic guitar, vocal tracks, and recorded at my friend Dan Anderson's apartment, and then his house. There was two different recording sessions, but this new one is coming out this Friday, April 30th, and it is a full-blown band, like in the traditional sense. So
Oh, okay. I must not have caught up on that, that you were including like an entire band with this round. Yeah.
Yeah. So Pat, who played keys on the last EP, is playing drums. And then I have my friends Brandon and Billy from Crucial Dudes and Pedactor. Brandon's on bass and Billy's on lead guitar, and me playing guitar and doing vocals. So it's a full out like, rocker, very traditional. So I think people will be surprised, I guess, compared to the earlier stuff.
That's killer. And so, yeah. And
Yeah.
So this new EP is called Private Anxieties, and it's going to be coming out on Jetsam-Flotsam, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you're only doing a cassette for this one, correct?
Correct. I really wanted to do a 7-inch, but for a band that's totally unknown, there's so much overhead up front, and you can get away with a shorter pressing, but then you kind of hit that threshold of like, am I asking too much money from people for a 7-inch? Because at least in the punk rock world, I feel like there's definitely some reservations as far as like that price threshold. So it was a toss up between a CD or a tape, and the other two releases have been CDs. And personally, I love CDs. I think they still look great. They sound great. The manufacturing time is so quick and the price point is low. It just blows my mind that people don't, I guess, eat them up. Because to me, if I can pay $10 for a CD at your merch table, like, why wouldn't I buy that? Versus like, an LP has to be $20 just because of the cost increases. So we did a tape. I've never done a tape for a graduation speech. I did a tape for a very short-lived project years ago. And before that, it was a tape for my old high school band, like, ripping tapes and creating your own like layout and artwork and doing it all from home. So they've had a bit of a resurgence, and I think they can look really cool and they can still be affordable. And we made the decision to throw on 3 demos of the 3 songs, the 3 full band songs, home demo versions of just me and playing guitar, piano, vocals, all that stuff, to add to the B-side as an exclusive bonus, just to give anyone that buys the tape a little something extra. So hopefully people like it.
Yeah, the cassette resurgence is an interesting, phenomenon, because I think you have people on one side of the aisle who are saying like, dude, what the hell? Like, why? Like, why would you do that? But they were saying that about vinyl for years. Like they were saying, why would you press vinyl anymore? Because nobody listens to it. And then sure enough, now people are eating it up. I will go on record and say that I think that there is something to the vinyl thing a little more than the cassette thing, because
for sure,
like listening to an entire record at home, I think arguably sounds substantially better than a cassette. And you might have like purists who come out there and say, well, a cassette can sound just as good too. You just have to have the right components, you have to use the right tape, and
right.
blah, 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 blah. I'm not sure that I'm ready to go down that route, because to me that's just another form of media that I'm not really ready to jump back into again.
Oh yeah, for sure. I agree. I guess what it comes down to for me is I am a big fan of physical media, especially when it comes to music. And if tapes having comeback, or CDs sticking around, and vinyl, still popping off. Like, to me, that's a good thing. Because I think, it shows that people still want something tangible. And it's also, just another avenue to help people understand, you know, the body of work that you're putting out there. It's like, yeah, maybe these photos mean something, or the thank you list means something. I can't tell you how many bands I discovered through bands thank you lists, like on CDs growing up. I mean, like when I was coming up, and my gateway to a lot of this was ska punk. And you listen to a gateway album like Real Big Fish, Turn the Radio Off, right? And then you look at the thank you list and you're like, well, who's Teen Hero, and who's whatever, the Scholars. I don't know. There's just like, you start reading these names, you're like, that sounds cool. Assorted jelly beans, like, what is that? And yeah, I just feel like it was so important for me to like find those bands and hear them. And what that does is, like, for every big band like Real Big Fish, you find a band like Bruce Lee band or something like that, or the Impossibles, or whoever. So for me, having some sort of tape or CD or physical media for the music is always important. And I hope people still connect with that. And yeah, if that means something that doesn't sound as good, but you still get to put the energy into it, and it's affordable, I think that's important.
Sure. Yeah, I believe that you're correct, and that, like, there are certainly a lot of people out there that are trying to be supportive, and they want the physical item, regardless of whether or not it's a vinyl record or a cassette or a CD, because I think that it just matters to them to have the item. And um, I also know plenty of people that have completely forsaken physical media altogether, and they only do digital. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that either. Of course, I think though that I would hope that they are buying the digital record though, because I mean,
Yeah.
I go on social media all the time, and like I try to tell people, it's like, dude, it's going to take you about 4,000 times listening to that song to equal how much they would get if you just buy the record. So
Right.
like you're doing the band a huge disservice by not just buying the record for $5 online.
I don't I don't know what the analytics are on that. I have to think that they're not buying the digital, only because I feel like there's been such a shift to Spotify, but I do feel like there's some hope, and I see this even in myself. When Bandcamp started doing Bandcamp Fridays, I started purchasing a lot more digital stuff. I mean, I was someone who was going out and buying the vinyl or the CD or the tape, and that can get expensive too. But I started going on for Bandcamp Friday and finding stuff that I was like, well, maybe I don't need to have the physical release of this, but I want to support and like throw money at it. And it's like, you spend like $40 in a day and you get 5-6 releases or whatever it is, and that's pretty cool too. So I hope that continues, because I do feel like it is another way to support. I mean, like, if you don't want the physical thing taking up space, at least make the digital purchase. And I still think that probably goes a lot longer of a way than the Spotify plays.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, and with cassettes, I do agree that it's something that is pretty inexpensive to manufacture. So like the risk benefit is a little bit more for the band, you know, or the artist, especially like you said, like for a newer artist, you know, like that can make a big difference. Cause you're right. Like the overhead for a vinyl record, it kind of doesn't matter how long it is. Like a 7-inch is still expensive compared to a 12-inch. You know, I mean, a 12-inch is more expensive, but even a 7-inch is pretty expensive to make unless you're doing like a very, very, very small run of lathe cut vinyl. And even those are expensive because you have to, you know, like charge like $15, you know? So
yeah.
So I mean, I think that's a wise call. Yeah,
for sure. It's difficult to navigate, but I'm glad that there's options out there. And yeah, I don't know. I just know it's not easy for artists. It's not easy for labels, and they, you know, they still want to help fans and they want to get them out there and create something unique. And I think a tape or a CD still does that. And there's still an audience. It's almost kind of difficult now for a lot of bands because there are such little pockets that are like, well, I only buy CDs, or I only buy tapes, or I only buy vinyl. And it's like, someone walks up to the merch table and they're like, oh, you don't have it on tape? And it's like, no. They're like, oh, well, I don't want it. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a little difficult sometimes, but
sure.
Tape it is for this release.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Yeah. And I mean, you know, let's talk a little bit about Aspiega. So Aspiega is a band that's been around for how long exactly?
A long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's been you guys have like at least like what, like 9 releases or something like
that. Yeah. So yeah, we have like 4 albums, and then a bunch of 7-inches. And I want to say the first album, Tense, came out in 2010. But I was playing before then as well. So Aspiega started as a solo project. Aspiega started the exact same way as Graduation Speech. It was me, a guitar, and a 4-track recorder. And I was playing solo. I recorded some stuff early on solo and released it. I try not to. I don't think it's like really included in the official like Aspiega becoming a full realized thing. There's like 2 different versions of the band, honestly. So there's like the initial, it's like solo, and then I did Tense and an EP called How I'm Not Feeling, which was 4 B-sides from that, and Ray was drumming on it, and my buddy Bill was playing bass, and he was in my previous band. So there's that era, and we had a lot of rotating bassists at that point. And then we released Every Last Piece on Paper and Plastic. And like a year or 2 before that, somewhere in that window, my friend Alec started playing bass with us, and he plays in Crucial Dudes. I was working for Jumpstart Records at the time, and we connected. I got him working at Jumpstart Records, actually, like in the screen printing part of the business. And Jumpstart released the Crucial Dudes record. Alec kind of came into the fold, and from then on, it's been me, Alec, and Ray. And I think that's the Aspiega that everyone really knows. And if you listen to those recordings, it's very much like, you know, it's like this Jawbreaker, Oscar, early Alkaline Trio type stuff. And the EP before that, or the album before that, was a different, some of those elements, but acoustic based with full band, it's different. So yeah, 2 different kind of bands. So really, I think the Aspiega everyone knows, and the albums that people really identify with, like that 2011 or 2012, I think, is when Every Last Piece came out. So yeah, we've been going along. I've been doing it forever, it seems like, since I was in college. So yeah.
And so you were working at Jumpstart Records for a while. What were you doing there? Were you doing PR?
I was doing mail order and PR a little bit and A&R and everything. I was going to Rowan University for radio, TV, film. It was my going into my senior year. I think I needed to finally do an internship. Everything at the school was very TV um, or radio oriented, and I knew that I didn't want to do either. And uh, I knew Jeremy from Jumpstart from our old bands playing together, and I knew he ran the label. And yeah, I asked him if he would do an internship, and he said yeah. And I cleared it with my uh, counselor at the school at Rowan, and uh, Jeremy definitely got a win there because it was right when Jumpstart was releasing a Wilhelm Scream's Career Suicide on vinyl. So it was coming out on CD on Nitro, and Jumpstart was doing the vinyl. So it was just like, I don't know. All I did that summer was pack a Wilhelm Scream records, which is cool. But yeah, I got thrown to the wolves pretty early on, and then went back and finished my senior year. And then that May, when I graduated at my party, Jeremy asked me to work for Jumpstart, and I worked part-time there and then part-time at UPS, and I did that for, I don't know, felt like forever. And I was doing Aspiega, which might as well have been another full-time job. I mean, we there was a point where we just didn't stop. Like that album Tense came out, and I just like threw myself into the fires. I was like, well, I'm just gonna play music all the time because like I just gotta like get through some stuff. And like yeah, we just started playing and playing and playing and playing and playing and playing it. And it was weird because we were never a band that was like on the road for like 2 months or a month or whatever. It wasn't like, hey, here's the Aspiega full US tour. It was here's here's all of our shows for the first 2 months of the year. And it was like almost every Friday through Sunday. And it's like, we're gonna work, and then we're gonna get in the car and we're gonna drive and we're gonna play these shows, and we're gonna roll up like, Monday morning or Sunday night real late and do it all over again. And that's all we did for a while.
Yeah, grinding, man.
Oh
Grinding.
yeah, really. I mean, it's hard to think about because it seems so like impossible now, looking back at it. But the three of us were just like, we were in. It's like, let's just play all these shows. And we played a ton of crappy shows. We played a ton of good shows. And it's also like, it's kind of part of the game. I feel like, it's like, you got to look like you're a band and playing shows, even if the shows are like absolutely terrible. But I feel like if you're not doing it, people aren't going to pay attention to you. They're just like, who is this band? I have no idea who they are. They play like one show a year. So I think it helped us in the long run. I mean, we ended up establishing a ton of great friendships with bands and people that book shows or run labels or anything, all aspects of music. So that was really cool for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely recall seeing the name Aspiega all the time, and I'll be perfectly honest with you. Like I didn't really like listen to the band. And it's not because I didn't want to, it was just more like, oh, okay. Like there's a band, they exist, but I'm moving on. You know what I mean?
Sure.
What I mean? It's just like, it wasn't like thrust in front of me, so, but that is it's representative of like what you were talking about though. It's like, yeah, like you guys were working, you guys were doing it and putting the name out there. And so I certainly remember seeing the name quite a lot. And you guys are all from New Jersey, right? Like you've basically been based in New Jersey this whole time, right?
Yeah, so I met Ray, our old ska bands played together, and my old ska core ska punk band, basically, again, kind of like two different phases of the band. We were a high school band. It was my first band ever started, and we threw a ton of local shows and built this huge local scene. Like I can't imagine having those shows today. I mean, it was like 200-300 people, even more than that, just like every time we threw a show. And then, I graduated. There were a bunch of changes in the band. I went to college, and the second version of the band started. We started hitting the road, touring and doing all that jazz. And then, I don't know, 2008, something like that, I guess things start kind of happening with Aspiga. I get Ray involved, and then Ray moves to LA. And so then we were like a bi-coastal band. So actually that album Tense, he like occasionally would fly back home and we would record, or we would tour, or we would do like, whatever, some shows. So he was out there for a little bit, then came back. But yeah, we're all from New Jersey. Actually, Ray lives in the same apartment complex as I do. He's like literally like a few apartments down. And then Alec lives in town as well. So we're all really close to each other.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. What was the name of that ska band, if you don't mind?
No Regrets.
No Regrets, huh?
Yeah, we played with like Fatter Than Albert and Flaming Tsunami, Shinobu, a ton of bands. We played Big D. Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's funny. I like a lot of people that I know. I mean, how old are you, Kevin, if you don't mind me asking?
I'll be 35 this August.
Okay, so yeah, so I'm a little bit older than you, but it seems like people within like this certain age range who have been playing music long enough have been in a ska band at some point in their career, and then it shifted into other genres or like whatever. And I don't know, it's an interesting phenomenon. I mean, ska was like a big deal like for a really long time, like back in like the 90s, and like it had its kind of moment of like, holy shnikes, it's everywhere,
right?
And then it didn't really disappear, but it like kind of went out of like the limelight. And now we're seeing like this crazy huge like resurgence in it, thanks to like, Kill Lincoln, Bad Time Records, Ska 2 Network, and like all those bands who are killing it, doing a great job. And I'd be curious to see maybe 6 years from now, and I'm not predicting that this is what's going to happen, but I would be interested to see if we see a similar pattern where some of these bands who are, ska bands, doing all this stuff within ska, and if it eventually kind of, I don't know, dithers away a little bit, if they shift over to doing other styles of music,
It feels inevitable, to be honest. But yeah, I got into that scene, I guess, on the tail end of ska being, front and center. So like, I guess I was in ninth grade in like 2000.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already like kind of like going down at that point. So, but it just left such a mark with me. I remember hearing like Blue Meanies and the Impossibles. Like the Impossibles just changed my entire world. And there were just a ton of great ska and ska punk bands, and I guess some of them probably by the time I discovered them were already done playing. But I got to see a ton of really cool bands too. Like I saw Edna's Goldfish before they broke up. I'm drawing a blank right now, but I saw so many bands, and I saw like I got to see Catch 22. They were selling out the Troc in Philly. The Pie Tasters were selling out the Troc in Philly, like when I was going. So they still had a lot of life. It just wasn't in the mainstream as much. So I do feel like there's this weird like gray area in the ska uh, timeline where like I feel like when I was playing in my band, especially like in college, and that's when like Fatter Than Albert were playing, and Flaming Tsunamis, and Bum Ruckus, the Know How, I Voted for Kodos, the Fad. Um, there were like a lot of really cool, interesting ska punk, ska core bands, and it was ska was not cool at all at that point. Like it was like this is official. Like the word is out. Ska is not cool, and you had a ton of bands that were obviously doing it because they absolutely loved the style. And I do feel like there's this weird gap between, you know, the third wave of, you know, your Real Big Fish, Less Than Jake, Aquabats, all these big bands, and I enjoy them as well, that were in the limelight front and center, and then kind of, you know, we're out of the light to where we're at now. There's this like gap of time where I feel like there were a bunch of really cool bands, and like I don't think it doesn't fit into this like third wave, fourth wave. It's like the third and a half wave of ska or something. But
Totally.
yeah, you know, it's a great genre. I think there's a ton of great bands and musicians that start there or you know, are still involved there, and yeah, it's I'm happy that I got to do it.
Yeah, I know that like folks like Jer from Ska 2 Network and like Aaron Carnes, who wrote the book In Defense of Ska, and like you know, there's a lot of people who are advocating for the fact that genre never actually, it never went away. You know,
No,
there were a lot of bands actually that just continued to keep playing that music. Like I mean, Hepcat, Agrolites, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, you
right.
know, the Slackers, just to name a few. You know, and those are like
Hmm.
some of the bigger ones. You know, um, it's just that, like you said, like it just kind of went out of the limelight and became out of fashion. And, you know, I mean, to hell with MTV anyway, like they kind of stopped playing music a decade ago anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, to kind of rein this conversation back in a little bit more about what we're talking about. So you started doing part-time PR. And I know that in conversations that we've had, because we've worked together, we're working together currently on one of the bands on the
Yep.
label. Um, it sounds like this is something that you kind of set out to be literally a part-time endeavor and kind of something that you could do like on, you know, your available free time. Like just tell me about like how that's been going, what that experience has been like, and like, I don't know, what do you think really helps make a good PR campaign for like a band, whether or not it's a punk rock band, just, you know, whatever style you're working with.
Sure. So you brought it up initially in the conversation about kind of, I guess, being introduced to, you know, my name or whatever it through people like Brian Moss. And um, the first project that I think really counts as like a part-time PR project was Playland by the Beach by Great Apes.
Mm-hmm.
Brian had reached out and was like, "Hey, you know, we got this EP coming out on Asian Man. Do you think you can help with PR?" And at that point, I was just doing stuff for Aspiga and some stuff at Jumpstart. I hadn't done anything outside of that. And I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess I can try to help." Which is awesome because I am just a huge fan of Brian's work. So I knew I was buying the album. Like, I'm stoked on this, and now I get to help. And so I just kind of went to it with my trusty Gmail account and just started emailing and seeing what would happen. And it has snowballed to what it is today, where I guess I want to say since January of 2020, something has shifted, and just the amount of work that comes in is overwhelming sometimes. And I love that. I feel very, very grateful that people trust me to help in that process for something that's usually super personal for them. but yes, it was always the intention was for this to be part-time. I don't know if that will change. I'm just going to continue to see how things move and, go from there. I would be thrilled if it was my full-time career and I got to work with awesome bands and labels. But right now it's just, part-time work. And I do feel like sometimes it works in my favor, because I can maybe put a little more focus on a certain project because I don't have as many other projects to work on. So it's like, I want to make sure that everyone feels like I'm actually giving it my full attention. Because it's I feel like every band has some sort of horror story where they feel like they paid a lot and were underserviced, and their album all of a sudden feels lifeless, and they poured so much of their time and energy into it, and now it's like out of the cycle, out of mind. And I don't want anyone to feel like that. So I try to make sure that I take on what I feel comfortable with and give it the attention that it needs. And then as far as a successful PR campaign, I think communication is such a key component from the outset. Connecting with the artist and the label, if there's a label involved, and having conversations about what they want out of it, what they want to see out of it, managing expectations. It's like, if you talk to a band early on, they're like, all I want is for my music video to premiere on Brooklyn Vegan, and you can get that, they're already going to be happy. Like, you've already done something, really good for them. But like, if you're starting a conversation, I'm like, well, you never know. You could end up on this late night show, or you could end up on this crazy playlist. Like, while that's true, I try not to push anything like that. I try to be realistic. I'll tell people flat out, like, hey, I have no problem emailing this person and trying to, get coverage there. But I've struck out, 20 times now, or, I've never reached out to them and I have no connection, and we'll see what happens. And sometimes it works and everyone's stoked, and sometimes it doesn't. But being clear in your communication, managing expectations, and authenticity, I think, is a huge part of it. It's like, going back to the start of the conversation and cheapening things and stuff like that. You want the artist to feel that, they're being represented properly. And I think those are all good keys to success for PR. And to be totally transparent, I fell into this, like, it's all been trial by fire. So there are a ton of people who have been in the game way longer than I have and much more experience. And I just kind of try my best and, listen to feedback from others and learn along the way. But I do want to say to anyone out there, whether it's PR or anything else, like, it's always in reach. I feel like, I got a MailChimp account for free. I had a Gmail account, and I just started, like, really going to work at this and trying to figure out, who these contacts are, and what bands would work well on certain sites. And so it's been a stumbling process, and I think I'm very happy with where things are at right now. And I just feel super grateful again to be able to work with any of the artists that I've worked with. It's like, I go back and think about some of the bands I've worked with, and I'm like, man, that's really cool. So I would have been listening to that record anyway. Like, right. So that's always fun.
Yeah, I think that that's an important thing to bring up is, you know, that there's a lot of, I guess, I don't know, like expectation that rolls in to
Sure.
like PR campaigns and everything. And, you know, like you mentioned, like you might reach out to a publication or a media outlet 20 times and never hear back from them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that they're not interested in something at some point. It's just that maybe they're just not interested in what you have right now, you know, because you know, they're a business and they're working on ad revenue, and like they literally work on trying to get eyes on their website, you know, so they're going to go with what they think is the right call at the right time. It's not anything to like really take personally, but it can be disheartening, you know,
Oh, for
when you're not
sure.
getting hits, you know. And I can only imagine, you know, somebody in your position who literally is the person who's being paid by the artist to kind of take the brunt of that.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to, you know, be the one to take that on the chin for them, even though like it's going to still transfer to them. Like, I mean, the artists are still going to be like, oh man, like we're not seeing any coverage. Like, what the hell? You know, like,
Right.
do we suck? Like, what's going on?
Right.
You know? Yeah.
And it's not that. And a couple of points I want to make. I've had crazy luck, like with the first graduation speech EP. I had reached out to Alt Press for another release, and they got back, and the release had already, like, it was like coming out that week, and they're like, well, we only have next week available, or this thing. And I was like, well, that doesn't work, but I do have this thing. And, you know, it's like me playing acoustic guitar, like nobody cares. And they were like, oh, this is like, we'd love to premiere this. And they did the full EP, and I was just like, it was funny because I remember someone screenshotted it and sent it to me, and they're like, hey, dude, you're like the only music on the site, like, and the articles, like, all the other articles are about like nothing to do with music right now. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. But yeah, you just never know, like the timing, you know. One thing that does always like kind of bother me a little bit, I'm sure it's, you know, it is what it is, but like you were saying, they might not want this thing or the next thing or the next thing, but maybe they want the thing way after that, you know. The thing that really bums me out is when I see someone like unsubscribe to like the mailing list or the review list. And I'm like, okay, maybe you didn't want the ska punk album, but I got this awesome thrash metal album coming out in like 3 months. You know, it's like, stick around. I don't know. But yeah, you know, it is what it is. Everyone deals with that, right? So all I can hope is that as I stick around and as I interact with these people more, there's actually more of a human connection, not just I'm a person that you don't know emailing you. So that's something I strive to work towards and build those relationships. So
yeah, I think that's an excellent thing to mention, is that, you know, a lot of these agency or media outlets and websites and publications, whatever they are, they're being inundated all the time, you know.
Oh God,
with
I couldn't imagine.
countless emails, you know,
Yeah.
and requests. So it really is something that I think as the artist, you just kind of need to accept the fact that there's going to be plenty that won't cover you, but there are some that will. So be really really grateful for the ones that do, you know, and really
Absolutely.
make the most of it, because that's a win. And then the rest of it is like, okay, well, that's fine, whatever, we can move on. We're moving on with our life. Because, you know, as much as it's a, you know, punch to the chin, it's like, hey man, at least you got something out of it. It wasn't nothing, you know.
Yeah. And going piggybacking off of that and the last point about managing expectations and all, like, you know, it's not uncommon to ask a band like, okay, like, who would you want to cover your band? And it's like, oh, well, we want, you know, this Pitchfork and this site and that site. And it's like, yeah, cool. Like, I would love that too. Absolutely. But sometimes it's about getting the band in front of the right audience. And what I mean by that is like, uh, I worked with a band from California called Reunions. Are you familiar with them?
Yes.
And it's like, who are we kidding? Like you put that in front of like a punk news crowd or something like that. They want that. So like you're gonna have a good reaction. And those are people that are probably actively gonna go see your band or buy the record and stuff. So sometimes you have to keep that in mind. It's not like it is good to get, coverage from something outside of the box. And like I think there's it needs to be a healthy mix. But I think there's nothing wrong with putting the music in front of a crowd that it's going to connect with. So like, okay, maybe they don't have as many followers, but like that following that they do have is very in tune with the music that they consume. So like, yeah, maybe you get you just got 25 more pre-orders or whatever it is because you put it on that site. I don't know. There's I feel like there's something there for sure. And you know, like you said, with the smaller sites, you should be thankful that they're covering your band because I mean, a ton of those people are probably doing that on their own time. And again, those are sites that will probably cover your band moving forward. And that's always a good thing because like you're like, oh well, if we announce a tour or a new single or whatever, like we know this site's going to cover it. And like, you know it's the long game. I feel like there's just so many great smaller sites out there that are so helpful to small bands. And sometimes you gotta remember, even if you grow as an artist, that like that retweet or that tag post or whatever, that it means a lot. It goes a long way. I mean, there's just so much noise out there. So it's like help each other out. I tell people, the artists I work with all the time, just like make sure you're tagging them or retweeting them or whatever. Like, make a point to do that. It means something. Break it up. I mean, gosh, we all have like 4 or 5 different social media accounts. Like put it in your Instagram story instead of doing, a Facebook post or whatever. Like, break it up, but like make sure they get the credit because it matters. So
I totally love everything you just said. I think all of that's really important.
for sure.
Well, yeah. I appreciate everything you said, and I am stoked about the work that you do. I appreciate that you're working with me and the bands that we're working with. Wanted to move on to the last couple of questions that I have for you. I like to throw these out to everyone that I have on the show. First one being, who are some artists that you really think should be on people's radars right now?
Okay. So I kind of made a quick list. So I'm gonna try to remember. There's a band from Canada. I want to say they're from Vancouver called Woolworm, Woolworm. They are like this like post-punk, um, just dark lyrics, incredibly catchy band. I have obsessed with this band ever since I heard about them, and they have an album out called AWE. I guess within the last like 2 years it came out, and it's just absolutely fantastic. There is a project out of New Orleans called New Holland, and it's the one of the members of a band called Pope, and they're on Community Records, and they play like fuzzed out indie rock. Pope is absolutely fantastic, and New Holland is fantastic as well. New Holland's just stripped down acoustic type stuff, and I love it. And then there's a band out of Philly called No Thank You on Lamo Records. I think they put out an album last year during the pandemic. The name is slipping my mind right now, but a Graduation Speech actually played a Philly basement show with them on the Maintenance Required tour. And at that point, I had been listening to their previous album nonstop. So we got to play a basement show together, and they were fantastic. And they seemed really promising. And then follow Part-Time PR, because there's a ton of great bands that I work with all the time. Devon Kay and the Solutions, Divided Heaven, Hanalei. I'll be working with Next Scars. There's just nonstop, really great punk, ska, everything underground. Great bands there. So definitely dive into that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great list. I'll add links to all the artists that you mentioned at
Right
various
on.
like a Bandcamp or something like that. And I'll add a link to the bands that you mentioned from the Part-Time PR roster as well.
Cool. Cool.
And then the last question I like to throw this out to everyone is, if you had to pick 5 records that you were going to be trapped on like an island with or something like that, what would they be?
So I have a list, and I think it's pretty good. So I'll roll with that. But it does. I feel like it changes all the time.
Sure.
I get obsessed with certain albums. But I think like all time, like old reliables. Jawbreaker, Dear You. The Ghost, This Is a Hospital. The Impossible's Return. The Lawrence Arms, Greatest Story Ever Told, and Oscar, Idol Will Kill. I think I could put those on anytime and just sing probably every single lyric and be totally happy. And all of those have influenced me as a songwriter. And I think it's just like a kind of a perfect representation of how I approach songwriting. Side note, I would also take any of those songwriters just in general on an island. So Devin Williams of Oscar, Gabe Haskell of The Impossibles, or Rory Phillips of The Impossibles, Blake Schwarzenbach, Brian Moss, and Chris of Lawrence Arms. Like, just let them write anything. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be interesting. So
that's great.
That's
a solid list. I mean, I think that's I love Jawbreaker. The Ghost, I think, was one of Brian's best bands, and that record is fantastic. I'm like you, like I've followed Brian for a long time, and like I think everything he's done is pretty great. But that record, I know, really kind of stuck out for me when I first heard it, for sure.
It was it was a total game changer for me. I think I bought it totally like blind too. I remember buying it at Tower Records, and the artwork is so awesome. And I'm pretty sure I bought that and Me Without You, AB Life. So two like pretty, that like post punk hardcore emo type records that I think are really they both really stand out. But yeah, the one artist I was feeling a little guilty about and not including is the Weaker Thans, or John K. Sampson. He's another one that just let me hear whatever he's writing, because it's going to be good.
Yeah, the Weaker Thans is a band that I know gets brought up quite a lot as being like a pretty impactful band, for a lot of songwriters, especially. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, got to see them in Philly. They were wonderful. I've seen John K. Sampson full band. I've seen him solo a handful of times as well, and he's just incredible. I mean, as a songwriter, as a lyricist, you really can't do much better than John K. Sampson. He seems very authentic and genuine, which is great. He's nice. Like, so that's always good.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, it's been really great talking with you and kind of just catching up a little bit. I appreciate, like I said, everything that you're doing, and I'm glad that we're working together. But everyone, please go check out Graduation Speech. Go check out Aspiega. And if you are in a band and you're looking for PR, consider reaching out to him. I would highly recommend him. He's been great. to work with. So yeah, pleasure having you on the show, and hopefully we'll talk to you real soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yep.
The rain hits the ledge and dances through a dirty screen onto the windowsill. I lay in bed. If I don't move, the day won't start. Killing time. Dare to try today. The world has other plans for you. Dare to try today. The world has other plans for you. Starts to rain, cutting words lay in the air for me to grab. I wait for my love. I hope she can understand